Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Welcome to another episode of Business Innovators Radio. I'm your host, Donna Gunter. Today we have with us Baruch Spiegel, CEO and founder of GENI, which stands for Global Education Network Initiative, and GENI World. Barrack established GENI in order to provide quality educational services to families, schools, and the broader community of educators. In addition, GENI is developing a massive inclusion through collaborative learning, which is directed both at children and adults. As a consultant behavior analyst, Barrack has had the privilege of working across 3 continents with many gifted and talented educators. It has helped mold the training packages he offers and has developed his ability to craft programs for children that take their cultural surroundings into consideration, as well as their abilities. Welcome to the show, Barrack.
Hi, Donna. Thanks for having me. That's quite the intro. I have to live up to it now.
Yes, that's always the case with introductions. Well, let's just go ahead and get into things. We're going to be talking primarily today about your new social media site for educators called GENI World. But I'm going to back up a little bit and ask you a big question. What are the biggest issues facing educators today, do you think?
Well, I know, as they say, it's rude to answer a question with a question, but I think one of the things that is an issue with educators, and I put myself in that category, is that we haven't been asking probably enough questions of ourselves, of each other, and the working environments that we go to every day. It's quite habitual still for everyone going to work, whether it be the classroom, the therapy room. But are we taking a step back and asking ourselves, is this the best that we can do? Is this the best that it can be? So I think asking questions is probably an issue that is subtle. It's not really tangible, but it's definitely there.
Well, I know just based on what I hear here in the States that sometimes parents ask way too many questions. Educators would wish parents would ask a few less questions. So let's talk a little bit about this from the parental side. What are the biggest issues around education that parents are facing these days?
I think probably it's a confusion of how much the home should be an extension of the school. I'm all for, having constructive boundaries at home, having meaningful experiences with jobs and chores, creating responsibility. But the caveat to that is that it needs to be, a different environment to school. It can't be as structured and it can't be as heavily geared towards, constant homework sessions and, that drive to just, learning. There is important time where, we just switch off and have downtime. So I think that there's a balance to be made. And I think that's probably one of the struggles that parents are facing right now is creating that balance.
Oh, I would agree. And sometimes I guess I think that, looking back on my own school days, or my parents were not even aware sometimes of who my teachers were, and going to confront them about something that had happened in school was just not on their radar. I mean, if I got trouble in school, there was just no question about it that I was wrong, and the school was always right. What are some ways that you can think of that might help parents and educators communicate better?
Well, I think valuing communication is the first step. And I think that actually starts between educators themselves. Within schools, and teachers will admit this in most of the time, is that they're not fantastic at working together, that there's still a lot of separation and disconnect, even between, classrooms next to each other, and that extends to relationships between parents and teachers. And I think that, the way I look at it is that, working together, working collaboratively is a skill, and therefore it needs to be practiced, and there needs to be a facilitator. There needs to be someone modeling that behavior that we can then learn from. So I think that I don't think it's as easy as just creating like a communication book between the teacher and the parent. I think that's a bit of a stopgap and a bit of a token gesture. Not without its merits, but it's not enough to really create a meaningful relationship between the two. And I think once you have that, it's not an easy thing to create in this day and age. But I think once you have that, then you have a two-way street where something can actually concerns can be addressed, and it can benefit the child in lots of different ways.
Well, I know one of the communication mediums that I see my family members using, cousins that still have kids in public school, is social media, and Facebook is one of the primary ones where lots of communication goes out. If there needs to be a homeroom mother, I don't know if it's still called that, or homeroom parent, to come in and help volunteer with something, or they're doing some kind of fundraising. A lot of that is passed along through Facebook.
Sure.
But with the fact that a lot of people are on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and other social media, what or why do educators need their own social media site, do you think?
Well, I think for me personally, I think in a traditional sense, they don't. And that sounds like I'm shooting myself in the foot there. But what I mean is that, I think most people would agree that Facebook is great in certain aspects and probably quite corrosive in others, because I think it has excited this sense of like short-term gratification, the like and share culture. And that's not something that I'm really trying to replicate. You call it social media because you need a term that people can relate to when they're first sort of navigating towards the site. But in terms of the platform that I've created and hope to grow, I want it to be more of a sort of an experience of an educational narrative where there's different forums covering, a wide range of sort of key educational areas that people can actually spend some time delving into, hopefully learn something because there's quite a lot of content already there, and then share their own opinions. I think, I think it's 3 or 4 billion people now that are using Facebook. We share a lot of things, but they're sound bites. I'm not sure if people really create a voice or a real meaningful narrative yet. And that's one thing I'm hoping to create.
So you wanted to really jump in and delve in and go deep for educators to really be free, be themselves, really express their opinions, and exchange some meaningful conversations about problems, issues, and current trends in education, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. And take their time doing it. I think that there's this, and that's not an easy thing to create. I'm under no illusion that, that's an easy fix, because we're so used to now just sort of dipping in, dipping out of content, and sometimes, the only way to really learn something is to read a paragraph or watch a 10-minute video or a half-an-hour video. Sometimes it just takes time to really absorb the content in a way that's actually going to benefit you, in your workplace. So, I'm not trying to draw in everyone. It's not about having, millions and millions of people sign up. It's really, for me, more about having people that are going to enjoy the content, really get something out of it, something actionable.
I can see that. Well, where did the idea for Jeannie World come from? What started that with you?
Well, I've been working in the field of applied behaviour analysis for over 15 years. I've worked in lots of different educational settings, and I've kind of sort of developed, an understanding in various areas. But it's not always easy to sort of aggregate all that information. There's not many places where you can go and get a real good snapshot of, the most up-to-date e-learning options, as well as alternative education options, as well as what, learning difficulties mean. You can find all that stuff in bits and pieces, but it takes a lot of time and it takes a certain amount of skill because you have to sort of sift through all the information, because there's a lot of information there, out there in the sort of internet ethos that isn't necessarily accurate. So I'm trying to use sort of my skill and expertise to kind of bring that information together so people have, one, a resource of information, hopefully something that's, inspiring, but also, a platform for them to comment upon rather than just sort of a blank slate.
And so you're trying to publish and promote any new ideas and that's going on in education, whether that's educational theory or classroom management or parental communications, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, with a certain amount of vetting, I suppose, not just, anything and everything, things that are, evidence-based with research behind them. And if they don't have the research behind them, then at least that's clearly stated, so there's no confusion. And also, things that are best practice. There's new techniques, there's new strategies, there's new technology. And there's old strategies and old behavioral systems that some people just aren't privy to, just because the information hasn't really been condensed. And professional development in education is something that's hugely lacking. So there isn't a natural channel for a lot of people to receive this information. So although it's a big endeavor, I felt like it was something that I felt quite passionate about, and I've really enjoyed creating that initial narrative or the initial content for, hopefully as it grows, other people to sort of build upon. So I'm hoping people will enjoy the experience of it as much as I've had creating it.
Well, I'm sure they will, especially when you're curating the best of the best content, because among starved or time-starved professions, I know teachers are the most time-starved in terms of all the other activities they have to do other than just teaching in the classroom, including lunchroom duty and bus duty and after-school tutoring, and then taking home papers to grade. The workday doesn't end at, school's out around here around 3:30, but, the workday for them doesn't end when school misses. It sometimes lasts long into the night. So having a place where they can go and search the best of the best and comment on the best of the best, I'm sure would be definitely appreciated by time-starved educators.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's important to say that it's for parents as well. I think that, some of the forums on there are things to do with autism, learning difficulties. There's actually a forum for parents' perspective, because I think the two shouldn't be separated. I think educators and parents, personally, I categorize parents as educators anyway. I don't understand the distinction, because, parents that are there and present are educators every day. Just because it's not in the classroom doesn't mean that education isn't happening. So I think, bringing those two groups of people together, I'm under no illusion that there's going to be, at times probably quite heated debate because people are passionate about this stuff. But I still think it's necessary. So I think, creating it, if I didn't think if it was worth it, I wouldn't have done it. And I have every faith that once people start to filter in, once people start to navigate, they'll see that value as well.
So you're looking to attract both parents and educators to the site. What about the administrators of education, principals, vice principals, superintendents, maybe technology folks, librarians, etc.? What about the other members of an educational community?
Yeah, the more the merrier. The way you have to categorize it in some way, just so people sort of know what they're clicking on. So, I've said educators and parents. But the truth of it is it's anybody that's kind of like-minded that wants to learn. One of the forums is purely for, inspirational quotes, because I think, the idea that we don't really have access of inspiration is important. I think one of the things, you asked earlier, what's one of the biggest issues facing educators? And I think one of it is that we've sort of forgotten how to have fun, which has lost a lot of the essence of what learning is supposed to be about. And I think, one of the reasons that I like digging up, old philosophers' quotes and things like that is that, they can really change your perspective and make you think in just a very short sentence or soundbite. So I think there's different things in there for everyone, but I don't want to just cast the net that wide. I think it will naturally attract people, hopefully through word of mouth and hopefully through the sort of advertising that we're doing. The people will naturally will gravitate towards it if they get a sense that that's what they're looking for.
All right. Well, you talked about the forum several times. Can you tell us a little bit more about the forums and what's in there?
Yeah, basically, my vision is that the forums are the hub of the site. There are other features with the site. People can blog and create events and create a profile and the usual options that come with a sort of social media style platform. But for me, the forums were the most important part of it. It's broken down into lots of different areas of education. I mentioned a few of them before: e-learning, research, health, nutrition, classroom behavioral strategies, autism, the community, parents' perspective, and a lot more. And I've created a lot of content already. So there's hundreds of posts already with information, links to sites, links to videos, links to research, with the idea that slowly but surely people will then create content of their own, but hopefully content that they themselves have vetted and they themselves will vouch for. So I really feel like the forum is where people will come together, because that's the whole point. Like, I don't want people isolated. I want people working together, even if it's just, making the odd comment here or just sharing something that they've experienced within the topic of one of the forums that they particularly like. So the forums for me are extremely important, and hopefully will be one of the biggest draws, I think, of the site.
Well, I know as I was watching your Facebook page, I think you posted something recently about childhood vaccinations, and I know at least here in the United States, that's a huge, huge hot topic. People are passionately either for that or against that. Has that stirred up a lot of interest in your forums?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, we're just quietly getting a lot of views. One of the things that I found is that people are scared to talk. People will click on something, they'll read it, they'll enjoy it, but actually getting people to comment and actually speak to one another is one of the biggest challenges in social media, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's a very topical subject, but I'm also very careful with these subjects. It's not just me saying, well, I think this. I draw sources from, reputable research-based institutions. There's links verifying it. There's the articles. There's the PDF documents of the research to back it up. Just to give people peace of mind, but also so that they can identify that they're reading something that's validated. One of the challenges with the internet is there's lots of things out there, a lot of information that's not validated or backed up. So yes, it has drawn up interest, but hopefully it's a good example of where the content within the site is constructed in a way that will hopefully, make people feel like they're actually navigating something that's been well researched.
Well, I know you talked about the fact that people like to read information. They're hesitant to comment on it, and that may come from the fact that they've been bullied on Facebook. And I know I've gotten into, well, not really gotten into anything because I just leave the conversation, but have gotten or felt severely beaten up by people's opinions on Facebook. And so I guess maybe can you talk about the safety of the comments and bullying issues? I mean, which is, of course, reflective of the educational system, but how can people feel safe that their comments will be valued and they're not going to be denigrated in some way on the site?
Well, I think you can never, fully censor anything. And I don't think you ever really want to fully censor anything. I mean, the whole point is if you're going to encourage people to talk, that you should allow people to speak. That being said, I think the nature of the site will solve a lot of its own problems. I'm not trying to attract everyone. I think some people will have quite sort of denigrating views and be quite abrasive just for the sake of, just for argument's sake. I think that's, unfortunately, that makes a lot of people tick. They get a certain amount of gratification out of doing that.
Right.
And I'm hoping with the nature of the site, because it's not all glitz and glamour, it's well put together, but it's quite simple. And so, and also the nature of the content will hopefully direct, the conversation to be civilized. But if it ever gets to the point where it is abrasive, we have, there's ways and systems to report abuse within the site, to make sure that everything, ticks all the boxes, and we have mediators looking at every forum so that if anything pops up that shouldn't be there, it's removed straight away. So the safeguards are in place. You hope you never have to do it, but eventually, if it grows to the point where there's a lot of people on it, then you will have to deal with that from time to time, but hopefully it won't be an issue.
Well, that's great to hear, because so many so much of what's happening in social media seems to have just degraded from intellectual discourse or being able to agree to disagree, without wanting to kill each other, and having a safe place to have really important conversations between parents and educators, for example, or about issues facing education, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand people are passionate, and I think when you're questioning something, people will naturally get defensive at times. But I think that highlights, one of the problems, one of the issues that communication and communicating with one another is a skill in and of itself, a skill that's not really being taught in a structured way in schools. So there's a certain amount of irony, the fact that there's a skill not being taught in schools that's very clearly missing sometimes when people are communicating as adults.
Right.
It's a bit of a paradox, and I think it's important that it's addressed, but addressed in a way that ultimately, we're trying to all work together. That it's not them versus us. I never see it like that. It's never parents versus educators, or psychology versus behavior analysis. I don't like drawing lines in the sand in any way. So, all you can do is encourage it and model it for people within the site, and hope that they sort of slowly, shape into having, as you said, like a constructive discourse.
Absolutely. I saw something recently on Facebook. It was one of these images that said something along the lines of, why are we teaching our children to memorize all of these dates of ancient battles and who the generals were and where they occurred, which of course I remember having to memorize in American history courses. And why are we not teaching them things like how to balance a checkbook, how to be a member of a team, how to work collaboratively, which are they really going to use in the end? And I thought, well, yes, I've never had to pull out, what general what general won such and such campaign in the the Battle of Lexington in the 1700s.
Well, it's funny you bring up the American sort of Revolution, because I'm working with a couple of kids that they have ADHD and dyslexia, which is a horrible combination.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah. Find it difficult to focus, and when you focus, you can't understand what's in front of you. It's a very challenging combination, particularly in the current education system, which is so heavily geared towards academics and so heavily geared towards sort of a textual-based presentation. But the reason I say is that, they were finding the content very difficult. And, this girl that I was working with, she had this thick textbook, and she was like, oh, why do I have to learn this? Never have a really good answer for a lot of the content of today's curriculum. But I glanced over and she had written on the side of her book, like, I Heart One Direction, on the side of an American history book. There was for me, I don't endorse, like graffiti on anything, but it was a very interesting juxtaposition between, where her interest and passion really lies and what she was being forced to endure. So there was no, I think when you're being forced to endure anything, there's no real learning happening. And, memorization of facts is just to pass a test. That's, when you break it down to its bare bones, that's all it is.
Exactly.
It's not transferable skills. It's not life skills. But we're caught in this cycle of, yes, but we need to get the pass, to get the test result, to get access to university, to get a good job, and to have a good life. And that's the narrative that I think we need to question. But question in a way of like opening up education as a whole, looking at all the alternatives, looking at it from a different perspective. So I think there's no one way to do it, but hopefully the content of GENI World, the forums, and the people navigating it, it's a start.
Well, what do you look as the future for GENI World? What are you hoping to have happen there?
Well, I'm hoping that I don't really know. I think that's probably more exciting. To an extent, I hope it grows into something that I didn't necessarily expect in a positive way. At the bare minimum, if I can create some content that affects some people's lives positively, then that's, to me, that's a job well done, even if it's just a small amount of people. And I know particularly, in the autism forums, which is a very topical subject at the moment.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
with the new prevalence figures in the States, I think it's still challenging to find the right information. And so I know that the parents that have gone on the Autism Forum, for example, have really, I don't know if enjoyed is the right word, but really appreciated the sort of sequence of content that's really helped them understand what they're going through, linked with other people. So for me, it's already a success to an extent, and I just want to sort of replicate that.
Well, it sounds like that it's also a place for people not to feel alone, especially around parents of autistic children. I know sometimes you feel like, or imagine you must feel like that you're in this battle all by yourself. Whether your child has autism or any other number of learning disabilities, and so it sounds like GENI World can bring people who are facing similar experiences together to provide community for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I know it can't be all things to all people, but I do know that ultimately people will make it grow. It will make it a success. And I think that if we can provide a hub or a focal point for those people, then they can make the connections, they can form groups, they can do other things. Once they've found that focal point for people going through the same sort of challenges. And I think we're all going through challenges in one form or another. And I think that we all need support, and we all need coaches, and we all need people to facilitate, the paths that we need to go down. And so I think there's room. I think there's room for this site. I think there's room for other sites. So I can see it being extremely helpful. I'm just going to carry on. I'm doing what I'm doing and slowly see people trickle in and slowly see it grow.
Well, I know one of the options you mentioned earlier was that people could list events. What kind of events do you envision being listed there, or are you envisioning having some of your own in the future?
Well, hopefully both. Whether it be, events in the Middle East where I'm currently based, or events back home in the UK, hopefully people can create their own events. Whether it's like an e-learning event or, a community event, that they can link up with people that are already based, members of the site. I think, I really like to see people actually doing something and taking action, even if it's something small. Not that it's a sort of a judgment or anything like that, but I think we've all been guilty of reading something, acknowledging it's important, hitting the like button and feeling like that's as far as our responsibility goes or as our action goes. And I think, to make any real meaningful change, we have to sort of take that next step to actually, meet with someone, start a group, to create something meaningful, some meaningful change. And it doesn't take that many people to do it. That's the key for me. It doesn't take a lot of people to actually start something that can grow it into something extremely important.
Oh, absolutely. It reminds me, and I guess I'm showing my age here, of a Barry Manilow song of all things. It's called One Voice, and one of the lyrics is something about, one voice singing in the darkness, and all it takes is one voice. And that's really true. All it takes is somebody to start to speak up and, provide some little leadership, and other people will follow and can begin to enact change.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, again, why I've got a real passion for looking at sort of old philosophers, and activists. I'm sort of a big Martin Luther King fan, Albert Einstein, more modern people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, people that are passionate and also people that we can learn from. I know quotes, again, is a soundbite, but it is a starting point. And it's a starting point to create something that's really positive. I'm a firm believer in whatever the core is, whatever grows from that core, that's what it will perpetuate. What I want the core of GENI World to be is meaningful content and collaborative sharing. And that's the core of it. So hopefully that will mean that as it grows, that's what will perpetuate.
Well, Barrack, how can people or listeners find out more about GENI World and perhaps join the site if they're interested?
Yeah, well, first of all, I should say it's completely free to sign up. Just go to www.geniworld.com. Sign up, takes a few minutes, completely free. You can go, you can go on Facebook to the Genie World page. As much as, I've said that's not the kind of platform that I'm trying to recreate. You also have to ride these waves to try and attract the people that you need. So it's a sort of necessary evil in a way. So you can click, you can sort of type in Genie World in Facebook, and you can find the link through that page as well. So yeah, there's a number of ways. Just keep thinking the word Genie World and you'll get to us.
Awesome. Well, I can definitely see your passion for education and passion for collaboration around education. So I hope that Genie World becomes one day as famous as Facebook is today, for educators, that is.
Yeah, well, we can cross our fingers. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks to those of you who have joined us today on Business Innovators Radio. I hope you're having a great day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.